So, sounds weird to say. I just turned 40. Today is my 40th birthday. And it doesn't seem right. Like, not that I don't feel 40 years old, but it just seems like there's some missing years in there somewhere. Like, I don't know. You ever get that? I think I did the math. Wait a minute, that can't be right. 1984, 1994, 10, 2004, 20, 2014, 30. Then I think to myself, 2021? No, it's 2024. So it's kind of weird. The math does work out somehow. I had to do it a couple times, but it does. And it just goes to show you time is flying by. And it's been a while since I've done one of these little walk and talk videos. And I've been meaning to do one. Actually, I've been writing several videos that are a little more involved than what I normally do. And it's one of those things, I don't want to get the details wrong. See, pretty much every video I've ever done on here, at most I've had a brief outline. And for these ones that I'm walking and speaking for 30 minutes uninterrupted, it's all just off the top of my head. I mean, I'm thinking about stuff. But 40 is kind of a big year. For me personally, birthday is usually not really a party holiday. It's usually one that causes a lot of like self-reflection. So I figured I could put that on here. And it's like, getting past the 30s, it's kind of a good deal. Because a lot of people didn't get it, and you don't really understand it when you're learning about it. Like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X were both murdered when they were 39. So I'm older now than they were. And that just doesn't seem right. It seems like in my head, they died long before I was born, but it seems like, no, weren't they like 50? And no, they were 39. They were still young men. And I know the idea of youth changes a lot, but in our timeline, they would be considered young men to die. That was not a middle age. That was young. And I have a grandfather who died when he was 39. So we've never met. Family members say I kind of look like him. At least I did when I was younger. I have pictures of him, and I don't think we look a whole lot alike, at least at this point. But you can see a family resemblance. But yeah, so it's kind of weird. I remember feeling this way when I turned 28, because Kurt Cobain died when he was 27. And I outlived Kurt Cobain, and I thought that was, I expected to, but at the same time, it was kind of like weird to put it in perspective. So it's just kind of something to think about. So I guess I'll kind of share like a little bit what I've been up to. So I've been up in the Bay Area most of the time now. However, I'm not like super socially active. There's a ton of friends up here I have not seen. I apologize. I want you to know, if you're watching this, I'm not avoiding you. I just haven't been. I've had obligations and duties which I'm kind of fulfilling, and I kind of haven't just had the opportunity to plan anything. So don't, if you live up here and you think, oh, Riley's been up here and he's ignoring me, like, please don't think that. Like, I've been kind of occupied. Still doing DonO'Neill.com. I'm actually planning a lot for that. There's multiple big things that are kind of in the works that I want to tell you about, but I can't tell you about just because I don't know how they're going to turn up, and there's other people involved, and I can't it'd be me involving them. But I understand there's cool stuff, and I'll definitely be back in Riverside for it. We're still doing our online store, of course. Still selling Gigaway prints. I'm still working on the project that I'm going to be doing up here for the free time I have up here, where I go over my grandfather's paintings one at a time. I kind of wanted to tell my grandfather's story from my perspective, because a lot of art stuff, they try to become neutral, and almost in a way it dehumanizes the artist. And they say, oh, the artist used these forms and colors to do this, and they think about them larger than life. And I want to tell the story of, my story of a guy studying watercolor who took over his grandfather's business, who I knew my grandfather. He died when I was 23. And he didn't train me watercolor, but we probably spent at least a couple hours together doing it. Not very much. People think that we spent a lot of time painting. We didn't. By the time I was taking RCC art classes, he was, it just didn't really happen. It happened a little bit. I'll flash the painting right now that we kind of did together. Once he got sick, that wasn't going to happen. So I learned from a lot of the RCC program at Riverside City College, and then from a lot of books that I inherited from him. And it's kind of weird because I can see him doing the exercises and stuff from the books. So I'm learning from some of the sources he learned from. But I wanted to tell this story, this Don O'Neill story, from the perspective of like someone who knew him, and I wanted to make it like interesting. And part of what I want to do is I want to go over each painting one at a time and tell, this is a lesson I think you can learn from this painting, because there's a lot of, I'll give an example, like one that I'm currently writing, it's about shadows. And a lot of times students will be like, oh, well, why don't I use black paint to make a nice shadow? It just seems black paint would be such an easy way to do it. And professors and instructors will say, don't do that. Just use these colors, use those colors. Well, I want to show multiple examples of why you don't do that. And like, here's how it's done right. So instead of telling someone like, don't do that, well, like, look, here's how dark shadowy colors are made without mixing black. I have a painting that's like perfect for it because you don't see it. And there's a whole bunch I want to show you. So back to my birthday. When I was 20, I took my very first art class, like at like a serious like college level. And I didn't think that I would be able to do it. I thought I'd be able to take the class, but I thought that you were born this way. And this is just not who you are, this is what you are. It's like some people are born with blonde hair, some people are born tall, some people are born artists. And it's like, you can't train someone, and if someone were born an artist, and I thought that was totally me. And I thought, oh, maybe I could learn basics of composition, because at the time I wanted to go to architecture school. And the actual architecture classes, the professors were really cool, but like the reality of what you'd have to do, I absolutely hated it. And I was really glad that I didn't like pursue it, because it wouldn't have worked out. But when I was 20, I took on this goal of, and it's a lifelong goal, and it's a good one to take on when you're young, because it takes so many decades to really really spend your effort on doing. You know, Steve Jobs has a quote that I kind of live by, and it's the people who do amazing things are no smarter than you, something like that. He said the people who, all those things that you think you can never do, well, the people who do them are no smarter than you. They maybe have better training, they may have, know something you don't know, but they're not really smarter or better than you. You can do it too. So I've always kind of had that, it might be harder for some people, others, but eventually you can do it. When I turned 30, this is like before I turned 30. When I turned 30, I realized I should make this a mission in my life. And that was when I picked up kettlebells. And I still do them. I'm not doing a serious program right now, but I do like a routine multiple times a week, working up to daily a week. And because I kind of figure, at 30, things start physically breaking down. And if you don't maintain things can go terribly wrong. And I didn't want that to happen to me. So with kettlebells, my philosophy was I wanted anti-fragility. I didn't want to be a physically fragile person. I wanted to where if something happened to me physically, it was happening to a physically robust body. So it was mostly one-arm swings and Turkish get-ups, and I'll flash some of those up. But it was a different modality. When I was a teenager, I used to go to the gym and stuff, and you just kind of do whatever. And I realized, especially after reading about this stuff, especially as you get older, programming matters so much more now. You can hurt yourself. You can hurt yourself really bad. You can not get the results you want. So I started having to really, I didn't really think about it. I had to learn about it. And I think this was a big thing, a big distinction. I noticed with a lot of folks on Reddit, they want to do art and they just start thinking about it, and they get really frustrating. And I'll say, when I started taking classes where I was actually taught by very competent instructors, I had excellent instructors, I wasn't thinking, I was learning. Not from learning you within thinking, but it's kind of, I wasn't generating the idea myself, how am I going to do this? They taught me how to do it. And they taught me basic things, which would let me then kind of be seeds for learning other things. So I learned kettlebells with that same mentality. I wasn't going to try to invent something or figure out. I was going to learn what other people have been working on and go off their work. So now, 40s, what do? I mean, I'm still drawing and painting. Actually, kind of like working out a lot of stuff that will be pretty cool paintings. I didn't do any finished paintings in my 30s. I did a couple. I'll flash them up. So this is kind of a retrospective, 30s retrospective. So I'll flash up some stuff that I did in my 30s. However, I don't consider any of this finished work. I consider it all experimental. There were gaps in what I wanted to do and then what I didn't know to get there. So I spent some time filling those gaps. So a lot of sketchbook work, trying to figure out the best way to use visual aids. I use a cameraless sitter for drawing, and then I layer tracing paper over it to refine it and change things. But it's like, well, how do you get really good at using a cameraless sitter? And that was a task. So I kind of kept that mindset. But 40s, what am I going to do? And I figured, well, you know, when I turned 20, I could express myself. When I turned 30, I could physically take care of myself in a way that no fragile body. And then 40, I figured, well, you know, I got to keep my mind doing something new. And part of the reason why I'm here at part is to help take care of my autistic nephew. He turned 17 today. We have the same birthday. I'll flash that picture on here. He was born on my 23rd birthday. We were born on the same day, in the same city, in the same building, 23 years apart. I think that's pretty cool. But he's nonverbal autistic. And he can kind of talk, but not really. He can't string together words. So he speaks in mostly individual words. And it's not really, he doesn't use verbs. He doesn't use pronouns. He just speaks with very direct nouns. And you can tell he's trying to learn. You can tell his brain is working. And I wanted to know what that's like. I wanted to know what it's like to have something on your mind, think about what you want to say, and not be able to do it. I want to be able to empathize with him. And so my thing for my 40s is learning language. And I'm starting with Italian and Latin. And my friend Paul once told me that when he's French American, and when he learned to talk as a little kid, you know, his parents are French, so he's speaking French, and of course, growing up in the United States, you're going to learn English. So, but he just knew them as words. And he said, when I was a kid, I just had all these words in my head. And then I noticed some people use these ones and some people use those ones. You know, some people won't use the French words and some people won't use the English words. You know, very, very young child. And I thought, oh, that's an interesting thing to think about. But I'll say, I've been doing Duolingo for about 6 months now in Italian and Latin. And I've actually, last week, I came in #1 in Diamond League, so I'll flash that up. And I get the feeling my nephew has, because I'll want to say something, but I can't. And my brain freezes up, and it's a very frustrating experience. And I think there's an Italian restaurant nearby, and I believe the folks who work there, who own it, are from Rome. And part of me is thinking, they're really nice people. They're really, really friendly people. And I'm thinking, oh, I should try to use my Italian that I'm learning, my basic, and it probably sounds horrible, Italian, to practice. Like, ask if I can order an Italian. Like I say, they'd probably just go with it. They're nice, you know. I don't think anyone's going to be like, no, absolutely not. Unless you're speaking full fluent Italian, do not speak to me. I don't expect that kind of treatment at all, ever. Like, that's never going to happen. But I feel so intimidated. And I don't feel intimidated speaking to people. But wow, having to piece together words in my head of a language I'm learning, it is such an intimidating thing. You feel so incredibly nervous. It's a nerve wrack. Like all these immigrants who come here and are like struggling to learn English, like I always figured, oh, that must be hard because I don't speak another language. But actually learning one, it is mentally so stressful. And in my lessons that I'm doing, and I'm spending about anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour a day every day, sometimes more, but on a week I think I'm spending like 5 to 7 hours a week. But I have to have total mental, like I can't think about anything else. I can't have any distractions. It'll break so easily. And I do what I call like the Ricky Ricardo, where I'll be thinking, trying to think as best I can in the Italian that I can. And then as soon as mentally something happens, I switch to English, and it's like, and I forget every word that I knew. And it's like, I call Ricky Ricardo because when he'd get mad, he would flip out in Spanish. And it's really weird because it's like, oh, like this gets very emotional. So like, yeah, to see like people learning English and keeping level-headed, wow. Until you feel the stress of it, you don't really respect it so much. Or like once you kind of go through their shoes, like I see my nephew and he's trying to think of words to say, and you know, his cognitive abilities prevent him from doing that. But watching him, like he gets frustrated and it's like, oh, then I get frustrated doing it too. But it's an interesting process because I can share like one thing that would happen was I would notice that there'd be like you'd listen to a sentence and I'd only get about 3 words in. I could hear the first 3 words, but I couldn't. After that, I had to slow down and digest them, and then the words would keep coming, and I would just like, I would lose it. And now I think I'm up to about 6 or 7. But if I watch Italian YouTubers and they speak so fast, and I'll pick out individual words, but a lot of times like it's so fast. And I speak English fast, so it's not like I can be like, oh, it's them who it speaks wrong. It's like, no, this is how I talk. It's but I watch some where they deliberately slow down, and it's kind of nice. Actually, it's really nice. But being able to go from remembering 3 words at a time to 7 is kind of a big deal. And mentally you feel good about it. Okay, yeah, so for Italian, I think it's a very beautiful language. It's interesting. And I like being able to make sense out of it. I can kind of read it, but like there's so many differences from English. One is the verbs are just a completely different animal. It's a different way of thinking, which is good. That's why I wanted to learn this because I wanted to train my brain to think differently. There's like the articles. There's like 6 different ways to use the word the, and I always get it wrong. You have a plural the, a singular the, a masculine and feminine the. So it's quite difficult, but that's what makes it interesting. And I said the reality is, if I go to Italy, I imagine that no matter how bad I'm speaking it, that people will be pretty cool that someone even went through it to learn it. And but I feel so intimidated trying to speak it. As I said, I don't think I could say it right now. I don't think I can say it right now. Plus, I still have to prepare things. So it's mostly still reading and writing, but I can kind of pronounce things. Now, Latin, I'm probably only giving that about 25% of the effort that I'm giving Italian. And it's a very interesting language. What I like about it is that it's familiar and yet it's also foreign. And what I really like about it is it explains a lot of English stuff. Like so much of English comes from Latin, and to learn the Latin, it really kind of helps because there's a lot of precision. What I like about it is there's no articles. It's just the words are more complicated in how you structure each word is complicated, but there's no articles, so it's easier to get things right. And on Duolingo, it's a lot of spoken, and a lot of the sentences are kind of nonsense. Some crap about like angry parrots drinking beer and stuff, but I genuinely like it. There are a couple Latin YouTubers that I watch, and for whatever reason, I think it's easier to listen to than Italian. Now, that doesn't sound worse or better. I think it's just easier because everyone's a second language speaker, so everyone speaks slowly. And there are fewer words in a sentence. But what I liked about it, my reasoning for doing it, I say this is mental stimulation, first and foremost. I want to constantly keep my brain in a position where it's struggling to learn something new. And my mentality was that I would do one until I felt a little frustrated, and then I would switch to the other and then do easy lessons. And I think that kind of goes with aging, because when you get older, you learn how to learn better. I remember Elliot Holtz used to say, I used to watch him a long time ago before he turned into a right-wing guy. He used to say it takes 300 to 500 repetitions to pattern something correctly, and 3,000 to 5,000 to rewrite faulty wiring. So if you have a bad habit, it's a lot harder to break a bad habit than it is to start a good habit. So kind of use that good habits system to focus. That's kind of what I'm doing with this. And that's what I recommend for a lot of people. I know a lot of kids try to do art on Reddit and stuff, and they have this huge aversion to taking classes, and they're developing bad habits, but they have to break it. But how I'm using this for language is I figure, well, if I practice 300 to 500 times for each concept, I should get that wiring down. If I'm doing a few dozen per day, these start to get to where they're month goals, their 2-week goals, their 6-week goals. And will I ever speak fluently? I have no idea. I figured after the Latin course is finished, I'll just keep, because it's a short one, I'll just keep doing the daily updates, which only take 10 minutes. And then I'd probably pick up Spanish, and just because it's like, that's more practical. But it's also kind of like, you can see how they're related, because there's a lot of, they just go. Drivers in Cupertino are so aggressive. Everyone turns illegal on a right into a pedestrian. Main streets of Cupertino. The mean streets of Cupertino, California. But, so that's been kind of my experience with it so far. I'm 6 months in, and I found it to be a mentally very stimulating challenge. And I'm just going to keep doing it. But I figured once the Latin one's done, I'll mostly probably just keep trying to do the Italian, and I'll probably try to do the Spanish one too. And my process is, well, if I know the root language of Spanish, and I know a cousin language of Spanish, perhaps learning actual Spanish will be pretty, and plus, just living in Southern California my whole life, you'd hear it. And I think it'd be pretty cool, and it's a good mental load. We need that, and it's not super stressful, but I'm having fun with it, and I'm learning it. So anyways, bit of a long talky video. Like I say, birthdays for me are more of a retrospective. I try to take on something new every decade of my life. It's purely for me, nothing to do with my business, nothing to do with anything else other than this is what a person needs. And yeah, that's kind of cool. I'm 40. I'm happy to say I haven't gone any more bald than I was when I was a teenager, very, very little. I remember I had a barber when I was like 13 tell me, you're gonna go bald in your 20s. And I was like, oh no. And then 20s came around, didn't really go bald. I always kind of had this widow's peak. And then 30s came around, didn't go bald. And I thought, I'll probably have gray hair. I don't have gray hair, but I shouldn't really I focused on that. Neither one of my parents had gray hair in their 40s. And I figure, well, it's kind of genetic. So anyway, I thought I'd come back. It's been a long time since we've done one of these walk and talk videos. I've been meaning to do more. I'm focusing on more, like I mentioned, I'm focusing on more just content driven, like a series. Like I say, the next series is going to be a Don O'Neill series. And the 500 bad paintings, which I started, that's in the works. It's just, there's something nervous about it because I need not an assembly line, but I need an efficient work system where I'm doing not just, you know, one, but I'm doing, because I break them into stages. I'm doing one, and then another, then another, then another. So I'm doing a lot of stage one work right now for a lot of stuff. So I can sit there and have, you know, I say it'd be really nice to have more than 2 a month. They're quite time consuming. We're gonna cut through the park. And yeah, that's kind of it. It's kind of it. There'll be more. And then I thank everyone who's been watching this stuff. There's not very many of you, and I thank every one of you who watched some of it. My goal is to make things in a time capsule. My oldest YouTube videos, I believe I uploaded in 2007. They're 17 years old and they're still there. So I figured, well, I can make an archive of stuff that'll stick around, and maybe folks in the future can find some value of it. Hell, you know, this, like I said, this video is for me. This is about my birthday and what's going on in my head. But the rest of it. So anyway, check out the other stuff that I posted. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.